San Francisco officials voting to require brick-and-mortar retailers to take cash as payment. In Philadelphia and New Jersey is banning a growing paperless practice that critics say discriminates against low-income people who may not have access to credit cards. The efforts come after the rollout last year of cashless Amazon Go stores, which require a customer to scan an app to enter. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The following is an America Matters media production. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the station or its advertisers, although we think they should. But that's the opinion of America Matters Media.
This is not America. Sha-la-la-la-la. Little piece of little beats in me. Well,
hello and welcome to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I am your host, Brendan Trainor, our co-host, Leland Faegre. We've got some new technology in the studio today that we're just getting a last-minute briefing on, but I think we're on the air.
Hope we get Jennifer to go with it.
Yeah, that would be nice. We missed Jennifer. She hasn't called in the last couple of weeks, but hopefully we'll get other people to call in today. And we have a lot to talk about. I really don't know where to begin. Did you? I mean, the cable news, of course, is all about the subpoena for Barr to appear. And the problem I have with the whole Mueller report is that, to me, everything they're talking about is completely irrelevant. The holes in the report are not about collusion so much or about obstruction of justice. The holes in the report are beginning to look like the whole thing was a setup to keep Trump from initiating his foreign policy program, especially rapprochement with Russia.
Primarily, yes.
Mm-hmm. And they've succeeded at that, even though they didn't get the indictment. And we have to wonder about the people around him.
If there's a compromise in the works, some sort of a trade-off between the deep state, CFR establishment, and the foreign policy that we're witnessing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, the holes in the report are that, first of all, it simply buys into the whole consensus by these 17 intelligence agencies that Russia deliberately and systematically tried to interfere in our election, and there's no evidence presented for that.
And it's never been clear to me why there are so many of them.
I know.
It takes 17 agencies to do this?
Yes, I know. But I don't know either. I mean, this is the national security state. It's just bureaucracy and redundancy on top of each other.
I guess they've compartmentalized the niche in which they are observing or spying.
Yeah, even the Coast Guard has spies.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. So it's uniquely compartmentalized for convenience or for the maximum advantage of intelligence gathering, I guess.
And the thing is that the report was written under the auspices of John Brennan and Clapper, and James Clapper, and it only was a few hand-picked agents. He admitted the agents were hand-picked, so it was a special task force, and all these other agencies simply signed on to it. They did not do their own investigation in any sense. They just said, okay, that's what you think, I'm not going to object to that, except the NSA. Now, the NSA appears to be kind of a purplish organization. It's the intelligence organizations like we've talked for before, the so-called intelligence community. I love that. You know, like they all go to church together.
They have a community.
But the intelligence community is
cake socials and that kind of thing.
Is basically blue. It's blue empire, while the Pentagon, and it seems like at least some of the time, the NSA is a red empire, more or less backing Trump. So the NSA only gave it a mediocre, well, maybe kind of recommendation. But these other 17 intelligence agencies,
they were all in.
Yeah, they were all in on it. Mm-hmm. And what is
what were they in on?
Yes, exactly. What they were in on is preserving their fiefdoms and their jobs and their budgets and everything else. Yes.
They were afraid of the cake socials going away.
The idea that Mueller presented an unbiased report is false, and there are many other leads that he failed to follow up on, or just regarding certain figures involved. Like he assumes that WikiLeaks was tied into Guccifer II and Russian and the GRU, Russian FBI, but without presenting any proof.
Yeah, it was all propaganda from Mueller's perspective to enforce the notion that everything was operating as it was supposed to within the deep state Justice Department intelligence establishment. Community. Did I say establishment? I meant community.
Community. So, and he ascribes motives to the Internet Research Association, the Facebook ad promoters in America, without interviewing any of them, without any first-hand witnesses.
And knowing fully well they're never going to show up.
Right, they're never going to show up. Although one company did fight them, and I don't know.
They fought him off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the whole thing, but the media is, of course, not going to focus on that. Because
that even went to the Supreme Court. Did you hear that story?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, that one company that says, well, if we're being charged, I want to see what I'm being charged with.
Yeah, they asked for discovery.
Yeah, and they weren't allowed to see it.
Huh.
And that was a Supreme Court decision, or was it the Chief Justice's decision?
Oh, okay.
That's the one that I got my eyeballs on. He's not to be trusted, that guy.
Yeah. And again, Daniel Lazar had an interesting take on the whole, internet thing. Jared Kushner said, that the 2 years of going against his father with Russiagate pales in comparison to a few Facebook ads. And, they went crazy.
For $160,000 or something.
Yeah, something like that. And the math they did was incredible, because they tell you that they spent so much money and so many people may have seen the ads over X amount of years. I think it's 4 years. But the most of the ads came in after the election. It was actually over. And they were trying to sow discord, but nobody will testify that that was their motive, and they have no first-hand knowledge of that.
Yeah, well, they were just meant to give legitimacy to the whole operation.
And in the same period of time that these small number of Facebook ads were on there, Facebook presented 33 trillion ads were on Facebook. So the number of people that may have seen the ad and may have clicked it and then may have clicked on an advertisement. You see, the Internet Research Agency, they only needed to make $25-50 a day from an ad, and they would, they would make a profit. There were no spies there. These were all Russian graduate students working for $600-800 a month at this, troll farm in St. Petersburg.
Yep.
Well, we'll be back.
We'll be back after the break.
Destination Midtown. Experience the difference. Reno's premier shopping extravaganza. Everything imaginable and more. Midtown matters.
Virginia, go to buynevadafirst.com, your source for all things local.
Destination Midtown. Experience the difference of Reno's premier shopping extravaganza.
City Mart and City Gas in the heart of Midtown. City Gas, 18 years of low gas prices. With City Mart, good quick food, liquor, tobacco, and...
Can I get a mulligan?
Ready to go?
Hey, are you sure you're okay to drive?
Yeah, I'm pretty sober. Yeah, I'm probably okay.
Probably okay isn't okay, especially when it comes to drinking and driving. If you're drinking, call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you.
To find out what's hot and happening, join Lady J for Smooth Jazz 2.0.
Join me Saturdays, 10 to noon, here on America Matters.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
Hello and welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm Brendan Trainor, your host, along with our co-host Leland Faegre, and we were talking a bit about the Mueller report and so on. But it all gets back to what was the primary purpose of the report? Was it really to impeach Trump? Well, for some people it was, but perhaps the whole object of the report was to handcuff Trump for the first 2 years and prevent him from his goal of finding some kind of common ground with Russia. And we saw it during the week when Trump talked to Putin for an hour. Putler, the Russian dictator, the authoritarian, seems to calm him down, or something. When he talks to Putler, he seems to come out of it feeling a little bit better. And
I would.
Yeah. So he told the people that Putler just wants what's best for the Venezuelans, and so does he. And it seems to be a different man, and that enrages the left. They blew up again.
Yeah, remember the good old days when they were friendly with the Soviet model? I mean, even Bernie Sanders went honeymoon there.
Yes.
The Rosenbergs. Mm-hmm. They fawned all over the Rosenbergs.
Oh. The thing about
what happened to those Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, Joe McCarthy in the 50s was an alcoholic and a very untactful person, to put it mildly, but he was basically right. Roosevelt had staffed his cabinet and with the communists.
He was right about that. There were communists in our government. So I mean, what exactly is the problem?
Well,
is it personality?
Despite the fact that some of them seem to forget it, Russia is no longer communist, and
they have a stock market.
Yes, they have a stock market, and Putler's capitalist. It's a mixed economy, very similar to many European economies. He's keeping oil for the most part, although there are private oil companies, but for the most part, oil is under his control, the most vital part of the Russian economy.
Well, that's where the money is.
Yeah, but Russia is not what they say it is. It's no longer this economy the size of Spain or Italy. It's actually becoming the world's fifth largest economy, catching up to Germany, and it's survived the sanctions, and not only survived the sanctions but prospered. And so, again, who is the power behind the throne? We were talking about whenever a populist or insurgent candidate gets the nomination, and why so often is he forced to pick someone as vice president that's completely different
Such
from
as?
him? Well, the classic one is everybody was all excited about Ronald Reagan, and then all of a sudden balloon was deflated.
Somebody pulled the punch bowl away.
Yes.
Oh my God, myself included. I mean, that was very, very disheartening.
Yes, when he picked George H.W. Bush. For head of the CIA and a deep state man, if there ever was one.
Yeah. I mean, he was everywhere they needed him to be. Mm-hmm. Rapprochement with China, the United Nations, wherever they needed him, he was there. He was their boy.
Yep. And another one that people don't realize is JFK. JFK wanted Adlai Stevenson, who was an experienced, respected figure in the Democratic Party, and instead he was forced to take LBJ, the crude.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, actually ethnically Jewish by Jewish law.
That's right.
And JFK was assassinated.
Johnson sounds so Jewish.
Yeah, and then Johnson was assassinated, and so it was Johnson that presided over this the Six-Day War in 1967, which actually solidified Israel as a state, an ongoing enterprise.
It was a very important dialectical moment in history.
Yes, it was. Yes, and some people, I don't know, because we'd hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but some people think that LBJ was behind the assassination.
Actually, there's a lot of people that believe that. I'm not necessarily one of them, but I mean, there's been a lot of research in that area.
Yes.
And he would be the first person you'd ask if you were doing an investigation, wouldn't you?
Sure.
Did he have a motive, etc.? Vice president, just a whisker away from the Oval Office. There's justification for the assumption.
Okay. So if I'm going to get in my 3 minutes of anti-Semitism for this show,
you can take 3 or 4 if you want.
there are people that believe that the Mossad was behind quite a few of these tragic events in our history. Not only JFK, but also Robert Kennedy. Remember, he was conveniently killed by a Palestinian, and the forensics just doesn't seem to match up. In that case, the magic bullet with JFK, or the fact that the people say that the bullet that killed Kennedy was fired from behind when Sirhan was in front of him and may not have even hit him. And Sirhan says he was brainwashed and didn't realize what he was doing. Okay, maybe not. And then there's also JFK Jr. JFK Jr. was gung-ho about as the publisher of George magazine, he was talking about getting into politics, and he always wanted to reopen the assassination of his father and brother. So his plane was approaching landing when all of a sudden it fell off the screen.
Right, but remember there were inclement conditions at the time.
Okay.
Exigent circumstances, fog, etc. But yeah, I mean, he seemed to be relatively determined to investigate the assassinations, and that he didn't get the memo apparently, because no other Kennedy family member has ever been apparently as interested in doing so.
Yes.
Is there anybody that comes to mind? I mean,
well, Robert.
Yeah, but I mean.
Nobody else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very peculiar to me that there wasn't more of an outrage in the family.
Mm-hmm. And maybe they know where the bodies are lying, and they just don't want to dig them up.
Yeah, that was what I was left with.
And also 9/11. All right. The big problem with 9/11 is what happened if it was some kind of a setup. What happened to this? Why are there no survivors? Well, there was the technology apparently at that time, although we're not sure, that the planes could have been taken over by some kind of remote controlled apparatus.
Right.
But it's very interesting that the movie that says that 9/11 was an inside job and tries to pin it on Bush or the CIA or all of those other things was actually produced by Zionist Jewish producer, that main movie. And so you have to wonder what is going on here. And I'm not saying we know the truth, just like we don't know the truth about the Holocaust, but these things are not allowed to be investigated at all from that point of view, except by a few brave people that are willing to stick their necks out.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's a whole other segment. I'd love to talk about 9/11 because there is a lot that was never discussed in mass media.
Yes.
But we should probably stay with Barr for the moment, because I think the Democrats have fired their preemptive strike here, holding him in contempt. That's all they got. They just shot their preemptive projectiles, and now they're left for the remainder of the episode that we're about to enter, which is the campaign itself. Really, we're in the campaign mode now.
Yeah.
And also that we're on offense, because Barr has clearly stated he's going after those who initiated the coup d'etat against Donald Trump. That's why they're going after Barr. No other reason. You know that we talked about this last week.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, 2% redacted version of the Mueller report is 400 feet down the Capitol hallway. And not a single Democrat has still gone in to read that report.
Yeah, and
not one.
Actually, somebody confronted them. It was on Outspoken. I forget. I can't think of her name, but the tall black woman that hosts.
On MSNBC.
Yeah, no, on Fox News. Gosh, she's very good. But she confronted them over that. She asked them, "Why haven't you read this? Couldn't you, if you're so concerned, about the grand jury testimony, couldn't you sort of read that report and maybe outline a specific issue that you want more information about, and try to get more information just on that issue instead of asking for all the grand jury testimony, which he's by law not allowed to do?"
Mm-hmm.
And they had no answer for that, really.
Right.
They just, hemmed and hawed and said, we're doing what we can to
And he said something also to the effect that he couldn't discuss it with other members of the House, or words to that effect. In other words, it was just a deflection, just an excuse. Because they know there's nothing there. There was never anything there to investigate. For 2 years, we spent $35 million to investigate nothing.
Well, government seems to do that all the time. And I also like when Christopher Wray was talking about how, well, he says he didn't see any evidence of spying. And he said, well, these are only 2 investigations out of the 10,000 investigations the FBI is conducting right now. And it kind of reminded me in Dr. Strangelove when General Buck Turgensen got up and the president said, well, what kind of program is this when the fighter bombers go past a certain line and they can't be recalled? I mean, isn't that a terrible thing? And he says, well, you can't condemn a program for one mess up. And
well, that was the humor of the thing. I don't know if it was ever really appreciated for the humor that was in there, but very funny.
So what Ray is saying is, well, we're doing all these 10,000. Yeah, but this is the most important 2 that you had.
And you're talking about yesterday's testimony?
Yes. Yeah. I don't like Christopher Wray. I don't trust him as far as
not
I
a
can.
bit.
No.
Not a bit. And you wonder how he got there, don't you? Mm-hmm. I mean, that was ostensibly Trump's decision, but how does that happen? Is somebody making the decisions for him that he lends his name to? Bolton comes to mind.
Okay. About Bolton?
I think we can. Stay with us.
Sparks from dragging chains can start a wildfire. Spark a change, not a wildfire. Visit SmokeyBear.com. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now back to the show.
Hello, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. This is Brendan Trainor, your host, and your co-host, Leland Faegre. And before we go further into the show, we'd like to give a shout-out to our main sponsor, Reno Computer Services. They are Reno's premier IT provider, computer repair and malware removal and data recovery service. They will provide routine computer maintenance on a monthly program and remove those viruses and malwares that may be affecting your computer, either business or home. And they are reached at www.renocomputerservices.com or give them a call at 775-737-4400. And so we would like to move on a little bit to the number 1 candidate who has reached the pinnacle of the primary season, Mr. Joseph Biden, former vice president under Barack Obama. You know, he had one of his gaffes the other day.
He gaffed?
He said Margaret Thatcher regrets having a relationship with Trump.
Yeah, he is just one repetitive gaffe after another, isn't he?
Yes.
I mean, it goes back. I mean, when he plagiarized Neil Kinnock years ago, the British parliamentarian, he just thinks he can get away with anything.
Okay.
I think that's the mindset.
Either that or he has a lot of senior moments.
Well, but he's been doing this for a long time. I mean, that plagiarization took place, a generation ago. That's not recent.
Well, now we've talked about how his son, Hunter, was named to the board of directors on Burisma Oil, a conglomerate in Ukraine, out of the blue, although he had never been involved with the oil before.
Earning $50,000 a month, I think?
Yes, $50K a month.
On that board. Yeah.
And other things are coming out about Hunter. If you've been following the Page 6 type of stories, we know now that Hunter, Joseph Biden did not run in 2016, citing the death of his son, Beau, and he was apparently deeply hurt by that. But what's also been seen in the tabloids is that Hunter was in a sexual relationship with Beau's wife for 2 years before the death.
So there was more there than what he was saying.
Exactly. And he continued the relationship without marrying her for another 2 years. Only recently they broke up.
Literally within the last, month or so?
Yes, exactly.
And she landed on her feet, didn't she?
Yeah, well, his wife did. Yeah,
that's what I meant.
Yeah, his, and that I'm talking about Hunter's wife. She is now being seen in the same social circles as Michelle Obama.
Yeah,
and
she's cozy with the Obamas.
Yeah, and she has a nice job there. Well, Hunter, I think, is working for a nonprofit now. Although you can make a lot of money in a nonprofit, I think it might be less than $50K a month. But at any rate, Hunter was discharged from the Naval Reserve for cocaine use, and his divorce papers claim that he had a large drug and gambling debts, and that took away from his wife and children's family resources.
And the Secret Service overlooked, apparently, his drug addiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, if you want to talk about white privilege, like the left loves to do,
I can't wait to talk about white privilege.
I mean, Hunter is the poster child for white privilege, but and Biden, we saw Biden. The video is available on the internet at a Council of Foreign Relations CFR meeting.
He was at the CFR headquarters in New York. Yeah.
And he bragged about how he extorted the Ukrainian prosecutor from investigating Burisma Oil and Hunter Biden in particular for corruption by telling them that if they didn't stop the investigation, they would lose $1 billion or $2. But, when you get to be $1 billion, it's penny change to us.
Everett Dirksen comes to mind.
Yes. And also Assange, he was sold out for a $4 billion loan from the IMF by Ecuador. But, so they stopped the investigation. Biden claimed, bragging about it in
within
6
a few hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they pulled the plug on it.
Before he left the CFR that afternoon, apparently. Just like that. Boy, that's one powerful agency.
I know. He's a big guy, He's a best BFF with everybody that counts, but is he really BFF with the people? That remains to be seen. He's got a big percentage of support because of his name recognition, which is, he did knock Bernie down from about 30% to half of that, to about 15, 17%.
I think that was always there. Mm-hmm. It was built in if he entered the race. Because none of the establishment want to deal with Bernie Sanders unless he's on the ticket. I think that's the deal. How are they going to be considered inclusive if they don't bring in the millennial vote, these millennial socialists? Well, how do you do that? Mm-hmm. You put Bernie on the ticket.
Okay.
But he's not going to be in the executive branch. So I think that's the wild establishment strategy here going forward. They can't alienate those people. That's all they got.
Yes.
That and Mueller. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all they got.
Bernie was recently given an op-ed, and I think USA Today, about Medicare for all. And on the same day, the USA Today editors published an editorial saying that he was nuts, that it's impossible to work.
Yeah, the money isn't there.
Yeah.
It can't work.
And without co-pays, all he's going to do is wreck the hospitals in this country and reduce the number of doctors willing to work. And
the medical arts.
Yes.
It'll just destroy the medical arts. Where's the incentive to come into the profession if you can't be recognized for your skills and be rewarded for them?
Yes. And the hospitals are a great source of middle-class jobs and also jobs for immigrants. Many immigrants wind up in service industries like nurses' aides and things like that, and to start out. And nurses and other professionals, lab X-ray technicians, those are all good, well-paying middle-class jobs. And if you're going to gut that by reducing the outpay for the Medicare, which Medicare does, it cuts down on the pay. they're going to have to lay off these jobs. Plus, it increases the demand. When medicine is, quote, free, unquote, you're going to have a lot more people wanting to go to the doctor for relatively minor ailments.
Yeah, they just get a sniffle, they're on their way.
Yep. And so more demand and less supply is apparently what the Democrats think is going to work. But anybody that has gone through Economics 101 knows that that does not work. It's a recipe for disaster, and yet most of the Dems are all for it. Now, I must say that Ron Paul endorsed Tulsi Gabbard.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. I mean, he has qualifications like all libertarians do about her spending, but she is not as obviously tied into the socialist agenda. I mean, she wants more spending and more green initiatives, of course. But you know, if we the major thing, we have to come to an idea that what is the greatest threat to the world now, and she's addressing the greatest
foreign
threats.
Policy aspect.
Foreign policy, which. Yeah. You know, another libertarian, Murray Rothbard, always voted for foreign policy. He actually supported Adlai Stevenson because he thought he would be better than Eisenhower on the Russia issue at the time. And now we have a new Russia issue, and she wants to not only end the Cold War, but not only end the war, regime change wars, which she talks about all the time, but also the nuclear threat. We are just are on the verge of producing tactical nuclear weapons that can be used on an ordinary battlefield.
And to her credit, unfortunately, you know, Biden is all on paper because he's not getting any kind of turnout.
Yeah,
So-
600 at his opening day rally.
His first one, yeah.
Kamala Harris had what, 25,000?
I mean, it's all downhill from there, isn't it? I mean, I just don't see him as a serious candidate. There isn't one on that side, but at least on paper, he looks like the most viable Democrat in the race.
On paper at this point, yes.
So.
Well, who else have you got? You've got Buttigieg, who is an out-of-the-closet Macron.
I'm sorry?
Buttigieg or... Butt cake, I don't know.
Out of the closet, what did you describe him?
He's an out-of-the-closet Macron.
Oh.
You know, and you know, Marine Le Pen actually passed Macron in the popularity polls in France last week.
Again?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting. I didn't see that poll, but I'm not surprised. I mean, isn't he down into the teens now or something?
I think so.
Yeah.
He has no answer for the Gilets jaunes movement, which is continuing on. Was it now, what, almost 5-6 months of continuous demonstrations?
Yeah, they're a determined bunch.
Yes. I don't know why Bolton doesn't want regime change in France, too. I mean, if we're so worried about the people.
Well, you're assuming he doesn't.
Yeah, maybe he does, yeah.
If he can move the landscape around, he's pretty excited about things.
And Rachel Maddow endorsed Bolton on one of her TV shows.
Yeah, I know.
She was trying to get her listeners to believe that Bolton is an actual human being.
And that reveals a lot about her.
Oh, yes.
For her to do that.
Yes.
Because, I mean, he is an embraceable Republican from her perspective. Neocon.
Whatever happened to the Democratic Party that I knew? I'm not going to say I loved because I didn't. I don't think I ever voted. Maybe Kennedy. If I was old enough to vote, I might have voted for Kennedy.
You mean the party that loved the Rosenbergs? That party?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Hector Larson, and this is my point of view. As a student aspiring to become an attorney, one of the main issues I find in the current justice system is the inconceivable amount of inmates in prison for drug crimes. Over 1.6 million people were incarcerated in 2017 for drug law violations. Over 1.3 million of them were for possession alone. Although it may be more than justified to imprison somebody for drug distribution or trafficking them over the border, as they perpetrate many of the drug issues in the US, to go to prison for simply having a joint on you is absurd. We spend $47+ billion on the drug epidemic annually. If we were to stop possession arrests, it would only be $6.9 billion. We cannot soundly put these people into cells next to seasoned criminals as they are not even in the same realm of disobedience. This is not only absurd, but may cause a higher probability of them becoming true criminals themselves. This has been Hector Larson's point.
Visit his website at sutlaw.com. That's SUT law.com, or call 800-700-1430. Sutton Law Center can help you protect your hard-earned assets. Call 800-700-1430 today, or visit sutlaw.com. Protect your assets now at sutlaw.com.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now back to the show.
Hi, and welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I am your host, Brendan Trainor, and our co-host, Leland Faegre, in the studio today. And we should touch a little bit on what's going on at the Nevada legislature. And if anybody has any first-hand knowledge, go ahead and give us a call. But we do know that, many of the bills had to have been taken up by the April deadline, and so that has passed. And the most we can do as freedom fighters in the legislature oftentimes is kill bad bills. And there are quite a few bad bills that died, some of them without even a vote. For example, Nevada is not going to be a sanctuary state. That bill died.
Where's the sound effect? We need an applause from Craig in there.
Yeah. And pre-kindergarten expansion is also dead. So, we have to get those kids into the state.
As early as possible.
Yes, and as late as possible. Now there'll be a post-PhD degree, I'm sure, in the future.
Literally cradle to grave.
Yep. Making sex education, expanding it, and creating the parents have to opt out rather than affirmatively opt in. That died too. And the first attempt to create a new tax, transportation tax based on the miles driven by the car rather than just the gasoline tax, died. On the constitutional issue, the Article 5 Constitutional Convention is also dead.
I'm breathing much easier.
Yes.
After that one. That was the main one for me.
Yeah, this Soros is one of the people, although there are people on the right that are pushing it too for different reasons.
Yeah, well, he hates every part of the Constitution.
Yes.
My defense is always, well, what other parts of the Constitution don't you like? Because if you work it out with them, if you actually ask them, it'll be everything.
Everything, yeah, sure.
There's nothing there I like.
And so putting minimum wage increases into the Constitution has died.
Good.
And still alive, though, is same-day voter registration and creating more counselors. Now, that's what they want in Oregon, too. The teachers are on strike in Oregon, Oregon is the highest-paid teachers in the country, in the West, but I think Nevada's right behind them. But they want more counselors, so we have to have counselors to get these kids' heads on right.
Yeah, it's just insane, isn't it? Yes. Are there any adults on that side of the aisle? I'm waiting for one to stand up.
And, of course, the Democrats' favorite hobby horse is annual sessions of the legislature, which would make it hard to have citizen legislatures, for sure. And also, we don't need more government, more legislature. We need a good reform would be fewer bills being allowed.
Right. And when I ran for office, I always argued the position that legislatures should not only be part-time, but unpaid. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, let's see who actually wants to serve.
Okay.
You'll get the ones that actually are civic-minded, mm-hmm. who have the country's paradigm built into their character, and they go up for a couple of weeks out of the year, sign some legislation, and turn off the lights and go home. Yeah. Back to the private sector.
Isn't New Hampshire probably the only state that does an unpaid legislature?
I'm not sure if New Hampshire is. If it's live free or die,
Okay.
It sounds like it might be.
And they may also force our private schools to adopt suicide education, although I think the...
Isn't that awful?
Yeah.
Just familiarizing children with the idea of taking one's life is the crime. Adults should know better.
And funding for Planned Parenthood is still alive. And so one of the good bills that is still alive is AB 420. What a great number on that bill.
Where did that come from?
Yes. But that's the original bill that was sponsored by the premier constitutionalist that we've had in the legislature, Don Gustafson. And that would go further to actually limit asset forfeiture by you can only seize property after a criminal conviction, and the proceeds would not go to the police but would go to education.
Oh, well, even that's a bad idea.
Well, yeah, but
at least it's not going.
Yeah, I mean, if it goes to the police, then they have an extra incentive to forfeit the property.
But I'm trying to cut that part of our lives out. I don't want education to get any more money.
Yeah.
I want to put it on a diet and phase it out. Return it to the private sector where it belongs.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I mean, you and I were both John Stuart Mill devotees and the other school movement people. And so the state has no real role in education except perhaps possibly John Stuart Mill in 1850 was the first one that talked about vouchers, but he talked about government vouchers only for the indigent, for the poor, so their kids can go to a private school.
And even there, that would return money to the states or allow them to keep money to make decisions about education,
right?
Rather than have the private sector do it. So yeah, I think even Thomas Paine considered that at the time, but I just think government shouldn't do anything with education whatsoever. Only despots like that idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know it's terrible that it's been so ingrained in our culture now, and so many parents figure that schools are cheaper than paying for a nanny, and they all have to have two jobs and to make a living.
Yeah, but they're not even safe.
Mm-hmm. We've seen that.
As the school shooting yesterday in Colorado, just miles from Columbine, reveals to us. Another gun-free zone is exploited by somebody with a gun.
Yes.
How long does it take us to figure this out? Campuses have to be armed. We have to get adults with firearms training on these campuses if they're to be saved. Yes. And I'm not for saving them, but as a temporary stopgap measure, let's arm these schools first and foremost and see if we can save them. And if they can't, we'll just, as Harry Brown said, sell them off. Every government asset should be sold off anyway,
Take down the national debt.
Yeah, to the highest bidder. The problem is, I don't think you're going to find a bidder for the public schools. They're so awful. Who's going to buy it?
Well, I don't know. Maybe the military-industrial complex would probably find a way to use them.
We could house some
if they
weaponry
don't already.
Yeah.
But so again, we don't need public education, and so we stalwartly defy the idea that government should be training, educating, indoctrinating, whatever you want to call it, our children. It's just a license for losing freedom for the next generation.
A prescription for a disastrous dictatorship at some point.
Yes.
And we're seeing the effects of it right now. I mean, we didn't get into this overnight.
No,
this happened over several generations. Each generation got less intelligent, less education, less motivation to preserve what they had. We didn't find ourselves in this situation just recently.
And that's another bill that died, which would be having courses in the public schools on constitutional principles and civics course. That did not survive the legislature either. And so we are stuck with the fact that each generation appears at least
a little less smart.
A little less smart and a little more socialist.
Yeah. And I think that has been clear for a long, long time.
Yes.
If people are honest about it and take a look at it. I mean, there's so many empirical pieces of evidence to reveal this. I mean, they're not voting, and when they do, they vote for tyranny.
Yeah.
Because that's what these despots on the socialist side of the aisle are doing. They're implementing socialism as quickly as possible and bragging about it.
Now they're bragging about it. Yeah, they didn't used to be so open, but now
in the Biden mold. No, they were always stealth socialists, but now they're obvious about it.
Fabians.
Yeah, right. The Cadillac socialists.
Yes, and we can see the pattern, and I know a lot of our listeners can see the pattern. But the problem is getting the average Joes out there to see the pattern. Although it looks like they saw something when they voted for Trump.
Yeah, well, that's right, and that's why some of us could read right straight through all of the polling and all the assumptions about Hillary's fate as president of the United States. I mean, it just didn't smell right to a lot of people. And then not just Sean Hannity. You're looking at somebody that called that one. He went up there and grabbed those blue states, and there was just something about that at the end of that campaign that revealed just how intelligent that strategy was. I mean, he's stupid like a fox. Anybody that says otherwise is